with all of this anti-Trump stuff, particularly when American military is involved, with all of it, there is an element that says these television networks that don't tell the truth should be sanctioned. Okay? So Brandon Carr is ahead of the FCC. He said, quote, broadcasters that are running hoaxes and news distortions, also known as fake news, have a chance now to correct course before their license renewals come up. The law is clear. Broadcasters must operate in public interest. They will lose their licenses if they do not. That is a threat, a direct threat. Now, there have been two occasions that I pointed out to you where the television press has reported fallacious stories. Two. First was the invasion of the Kurds, which was picked up by a lot of people, that the Kurdish people, army, whatever it may be, were going to invade Iran. And that did not happen. I told you it wasn't going to happen because there's no supply line. You can't get them in there logistically. Okay? And the second story, which was as absurd as it comes, was reported by ABC News, that Iran was targeting California with drones. It's totally untrue. And so is the Kurd thing. And when you report something as fact, it's got to be true, right? And both of those stories got a lot of traction. And America's like, okay, what the deuce is going on here? We having a ground war? Are we gonna California gonna go up with drones? Even Gavin Newsom said, nah, we don't have any evidence of that. There's no evidence that there's going to be any drones fired at us. And I'm going, what? Did ABC News apologize? No. They didn't apologize. So, Carr, I don't like the heavy hand of government on the communications industry. Obviously, I'm doing this for 35 years. I don't want the government to tell me what I can and can't say. But if I'm wrong, I have a responsibility, right? Anyway, there was some reaction to Carr, and one of the reactors is Senator Ron Johnson, a friend of the program from Wisconsin, and he joins us now from Washington. So, Senator, you went on a record and you said, look, I don't like this, FCC surveillance, let's call it that, correct?
Well, hello, Bill. Well, that question was sprung on me before I even heard what Carr said or the points he was making. I wasn't aware of what he was pointing to in terms of what the broadcasters were reporting falsely. But, having the question sprung on me, I resorted to what my basic belief is like you, I don't like the heavy hand of government. I don't care who wields it. I'm a strong defender in the First Amendment and freedom of speech and freedom of the press. That said, these broadcasters are granted licenses to use this incredibly lucrative broadcast spectrum, and they have a certain responsibility to the public. So I'll hedge my comments a little bit from the standpoint of, the legacy corporate media is highly biased. When they get something wrong, I think they do have a duty to correct the record. And if they consistently don't do that, if they consistently report false news, don't correct the record, their license just might be in jeopardy. But again, I would prefer the federal government not having to wield that kind of power. It'd be nice if we had unbiased broadcasters, but we don't.
And we never will again, because it's too much money in being biased. That's easy money to make. But there's a difference, and here's the difference. So when you report something and you say this is happening, this is a fact, and it's not a fact, that it's totally wrong, you have an obligation to correct the record. And the anti-Trump media rarely does that. Once in a while, but rarely. They'll just let this stuff go. Opinion is opinion. I mean, almost every pundit on television, with the exception of me, is wrong every day.
Let's face it, the Washington Post has not given back its Pulitzer Prize for the Russian collusion hoax stories, right? They got a Pulitzer Prize for
Right.
that completely false narrative. They never apologized. They haven't given back that Pulitzer Prize. So no, I'm no fan of legacy media, trust me. But I'm not a big
Yeah,
fan of
I
big
mean,
government either.
and what the senator is talking about is that the Washington Post and the New York Times ramped up this Russian collusion thing that Trump was involved in 2016. Totally bogus story. They won Pulitzer Prizes, didn't give them back. I mean, that was the end. For me, that was it. But what I'm trying to say is that opinion, you can be wrong, and that's not a problem. But a fact that, hey, in California, Iranians are getting ready to drone you. I mean, come on. And then you get into irresponsibility. But here's something very interesting, that there are certain networks on the air, CNN is one of them, that won't book guests, all right, that go against their philosophy. So CNN despises Donald Trump. So you very rarely see that. I think they have one guy pundit that on quite often who sticks up for Trump, but it's a mountain of people against him. MS does the same thing. The networks do the same thing, not as much. But you don't see a lot of Trump people on there. Comedians, late night, you don't see anybody. The View doesn't ever book people who are against their liberal point of view. That disturbs me now. Now I'm saying, and there's only one correction, Senator, only one. That would be the government licensing stuff, right?
Yeah, but I think cable news is different than broadcast news. I don't think it's the same kind of licensing requirements. You know, they're basically paying for their ability to broadcast
That's
over
right.
cable, and you've
That's
got
right.
competition too. Again, I like the fact we have a free press. We have all these alternate media types now, and that's a good thing. I'd rather have more speech than government restricting speech.
Okay. You live in a swing state, a very important state, Wisconsin. And as we reported, oil prices, gas prices pump up $1 very quickly. And Wisconsin's not a wealthy state, and it's working people. You know that. You know the state as well as anybody knows it. Are those people now are going to accept the Iranian action, or are they going to rebel against it because they're getting hurt in their own personal finance world?
Well, I need to point out in June of 2022, national gas prices averaged about $5 a gallon. Inflation was 40-year high at 9.1%. Now that wasn't caused by a war that we had to engage in. I mean, President Trump, Iran was at war with us for 47 years. They are a menace. They are proving themselves to be a menace. We had to act before we couldn't act, before they became a nuclear power, had so many missiles, had so many drones that you simply couldn't do what we're doing right now. So again, gas prices are up because of President Trump having the courage to act before it was too late. The gas prices under Biden, they were up there because of his war on fossil fuel, because of the policies they were undertaking. So it's important to point out to the American public, yeah, nobody likes high gas prices, but we actually were bringing them down with Trump's policies of drill, baby, drill. And again, I hope people appreciate the fact that we had to act. I mean, we have to take Iran out. We can no longer allow them to menace the world. They've been doing it for 47 years. We cannot let them be a nuclear power. But I don't think we don't want them to. We can't allow them to plug up the Strait of Hormuz either. They have to be ended.
Yeah,
That evil regime.
the polls are about 50-50. The longer the Iranian thing goes on, the more the economy be damaged. And then the midterms loom in November. So it's really impossible to predict it. I don't know how many Americans at this point in history, Senator, are putting their country before themselves. You know what I mean?
We're all human beings. We're selfish. You know, the one thing this I'm optimistic about, and again, stunning achievement already by the Israeli and U.S. military and our brave men and women. But the fact that now you have Iranian citizens basically being able to call in airstrikes, that's the way you can weaken the regime, get rid of the evildoers in Iran so the Iranian people can take over. We've never been able to do that before in warfare, where you basically have the Iranian people who want to be freed of this evil regime being able to call in airstrikes. It's got the Iranian security troops shaking their boots. Great article in the Wall Street Journal today about that. So that gives me some hope.
All right. We all need hope. Finally, a Save America Act. You're very involved with this. On the merits of it, you should have to show an ID because it's in the Constitution that you cannot vote unless you're an American citizen. So how else could the authorities police the Constitution unless they're asking for proof of citizenship? That doesn't seem to be that complicated. Yet you have an entire party, the Democratic Party, that opposes that. And they're going to block that SAVE Act. That's going to be blocked. They're not going to get the 60 votes in the Senate. I'm just flabbergasted at this, that an entire party would say, we don't really care about what the Constitution says. We don't want any requirement in order to register to vote. How stunned are you?
Well, it doesn't surprise me. This is existential to their game plan of turning America into a one-party nation. If they get the majority, they will eliminate the filibuster. They'll end the filibuster, turn Puerto Rico, D.C. into states. They'll pass the Supreme Court. We need to stop them from doing that. So right now, the split in the Republican Party isn't so much, would we like to have the filibuster to stop really bad liberal legislation? Yeah, but the split is, do we believe that Democrats will end it, and should we do it first? I'm in that camp versus the other people that are hoping against all hope the Democrats won't do it. But the sad fact of the matter is, this is their game plan. That's why they flooded millions of people into America. Plus up these sanctuary cities and states, get more members of Congress, make it very easy to cheat. And the fact that they allow illegal immigrants to vote in some of these local elections, like in D.C., like in New York, once you're registered to vote in a local election, makes it pretty easy to vote in a federal election. Of course, Democrats sit there, we don't want to do that. No, that's exactly what they want to do. So they're going to lie all day long during this debate, but we're having this debate to hopefully expose the Democrats for who they are and make them defend why are they opposed to what 80% of the American people support.
Well, Minority Leader Schumer continues to make the argument that this is unfair, that a lot of people don't have IDs and they can't get IDs. So some woman who's been married to 5 different guys has 5 different names and doesn't have the name on her birth certificate or whatever it may be. And I'm saying to myself, Chuck, do you not understand that states can remedy that very, very quickly? Because the states, of course, are in charge of getting people credentials so they can register to vote if they're American citizens. Am I wrong? Am I going off the path here?
No, in the end, Senator Lee, it's his piece of legislation. He's made it as easy as possible to get the kind of ID, but you have to go through the effort to show that you're a citizen, have the type of ID to vote. But in the end, he leaves it up to the states because we still want states to administer elections.
Yeah.
We're just talking about some very common sense national standards governing those state-running elections.
Yeah, because all you would have to do, the state legislature would say, okay, you don't have an ID, a valid ID, we're going to send you one. Just as here's the form, you fill it out, and then you'll get your ID and you'll be able to vote. But you don't hear that. You hear Jim Crow and this is that, and they don't want this one to vote, they don't want that one to vote. And my head's going to blow off. We've been here in Washington for 3 days. I feel like I've been here 3 months, Senator. I don't know how you guys do it. I mean, it's just like crazy.
I was just on the floor listening to Schumer. Yeah, your head wants to explode. You are forced to refute what he has to say.
I know. It's just so crazy. But this bill is not going to pass the SAVE Act this time around. I don't like busting out the filibuster because of exactly what you pointed out. If the Republicans do get around to doing that, then the Democrats are going to use that to do all kinds of insane stuff when it's their turn, when they have the power of the 3, the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Last word on Wisconsin. Do you have a poll? How do you put your finger on how the folks are feeling in your state? How do you know how they're feeling about gas prices? Do you get information coming to you?
Well, if you're a candidate, you're doing that kind of polling, and it's getting, it gets the micro issues. But in Wisconsin, you just basically say it's going to be a 50-50 race. If it's a November election, a fall election, it's going to be close. No matter who's running, who's at the top of the ticket, it's going to be close. We're that close a state. That's why we have a very conservative senator and we have a very liberal senator as well. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's what we've got.
And that's because of Milwaukee and Madison. Those are the two big urban centers that vote left, right?
Yeah, so to me, I always used to describe Pennsylvania as you've got Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and then Alabama in between. It's very similar to Wisconsin. We got Milwaukee, we got Madison, and we got very conservative rural area throughout Wisconsin. It just breaks down pretty much 50-50.
Okay, let's get into why we, the people, are involved with this in our wallets. Dr. Peter Morici is a economist and professor emeritus at the University of Maryland, and he joins us now from Alexandria, Virginia, just a few miles from where I am. I'd love to have you in the studio, but we don't have a studio in another chair here in DC. Only have one chair. So
It sounds like the first place I taught, this little Lutheran college in Minneapolis. We couldn't afford chalk.
Right, I had to put you on a bird because it's not a chair. We can't get in a chair. And there's only one camera. It's just like, boom. All right, so look, doctor, we have plenty of oil in the United States, and they're releasing the reserves, and they're doing everything. Why am I paying 50 cents more a gallon? Why?
Well, because we can export the oil for one thing, and we also import refined products. We don't refine all the gasoline we need, so we're importing refined products which are made out of more expensive oil. But the U.S. price goes up and down with the Brent crude price. The Texas Intermediate price goes up and down with Brent crude, and they've both gone up by about 50%.
But I don't understand that. So usually it's supply and demand, and the supply.
Well, that's what's going
of
on.
oil, and I get your point that we need some ingredients that we have to bring in here, but that's not the big thing. The big thing is the world price of oil, which is now over $100. Okay, but we in the United States, we don't have to buy that oil. So why are
we do.
I don't?
Well, we don't pump exactly the right kind of oil for our refineries. So what we tend to do is export some of it and import some refined product. The other thing you have to consider is anybody who's got oil to sell, they can sell it abroad for a lot more money than they can here. And so that lifts the price.
But I think it's the U.S. companies that are doing this. They're lifting the price, and they don't have to lift the price. It's almost like a cabal. It's almost like a monopoly, because all the same Sinclair or Mobil or Exxon, they all do the same thing.
Well, they are making money, but they tend to do the same thing under all circumstances because they're responding to market prices. I mean, two farmers that have beef cattle of the same quality, they sell at the same price because the market and supply and demand dictate it or require it. You can't expect one farmer to sell cheaper than another.
Don't you think there's a collusion among American oil companies to get these prices up as high as they can get them?
I hate to tell you this, but you're starting to sound like Elizabeth Warren or AOC talking about the banks. I don't think they're conspiring at all. Now, they see what each other does, and that's a problem. But that's a problem in a lot of markets. But I don't think, I don't buy this notion that America is a conglomeration of monopolists, like the grocery stores are conspiring and the oil companies are conspiring.
No, I'm not a
pretty tough to
conspiracy guy
do that.
either. But I don't know any other product that has the same price in 4 gas stations. I don't know any. And when the president says, well, we're going to release all this oil from our reserves, and the price doesn't go down.
Well, it takes time to pump it out.
Why bother releasing it?
Joe Biden pumped out about the same amount of oil as Donald Trump has now authorized. As the oil and the salt domes go down, there's less pressure and it comes out more slowly. And then you have to disperse it into the marketplace. These things do not happen instantaneously. This is not like TV where you and I can make TV and people can see it, almost the same time. With oil, it takes time to do this stuff.
But it doesn't really help. So the president announces, we're going to do all the oil release, and it doesn't bring the prices down. So why bother doing it?
I'm a little skeptical of it myself. I don't think things should be bad enough that we need to release that oil because we
All
do
right,
produce a
because
lot of oil. The impact on the, price of gasoline is going up anyway, and the impact on the economy is not going to be as terrible as some people fear because while consumers are paying more for gasoline, they're not paying it to Saudi Arabia this time, like the way they were in the 70s. They're paying it to Exxon. So Exxon's
yeah,
dividends will go up. They'll have more
they're paying
cash
it
to
to the
spend.
American companies. It's not going overseas, but it's still painful for the American worker who's operating at a very thin margin. And all of a sudden, the oil and utility costs are double what they were. Now, here's the question. President Trump had to know that would happen when he initiated the Iranian campaign, right?
I don't know. I mean, after all, he had
Oh, you don't
advisors
think
who
he
told,
knew?
hold on a second. Hold on. Hold on. This administration didn't spend its draft choices, its top draft choices on economists. I mean, these are the same guys who told Bessent and the president that tariffs would not raise prices. And tariffs have, in some measure, raised prices. Foreign producers haven't eaten the tariffs. They've mostly been eaten by American companies and American consumers. So it's not inconceivable to me that they deceived themselves at the White House and that he wasn't getting good information. But even if he was, so he knew, we have to do something about Iran. They are very close to having weapon grade nuclear material. The time has come. That they never stopped. The Wall Street Journal had a very interesting article this morning. They never stopped trying to make a nuclear weapon, even during the period the treaty was enforced. Don't let the liberals tell you that Donald Trump disrupted that and that now they're the reason, he's the reason they restarted their program. It was going on all along. No,
No,
the
I
time
listen,
had
I
come
agree
to
with
put
that,
these killers, the time has
but
come
there's
to put
one
these
gap.
killers out of business.
I see it the way you see it, as far as Iran being a danger to the world. And I do believe that they were cheating and that our strike last June knocked out most of their nuclear capacity, but not all of it. And I do believe that they actually told the United States, we're not going to stop, because I know that to be true in their last meeting in Geneva. But here's what I don't know. And this is why I can't go in with 100% certainty. The word imminent. And that's what the left is seized upon. What do you mean imminent?
That
What
was
does
a
that
poor
mean?
choice of words. That was a poor choice of words.
Yeah, because
And on,
we don't have access to US intel. We don't know what the CIA and Mossad, the Israeli intel service, knows. And I think the president has got to be a little more specific in defining what they call the clear and present danger. Would I be wrong?
well, we do know, but now we're looking at the notion of sending in the special services and whatnot. And Stratovus, the former commander in chief of NATO and of the Southern Command, it says that about 10% of the uranium they have, in a column he wrote yesterday or today, is very close, very, very close to being new weapons grade. So that could be uplifted. I mean, they need to
But
be
he's
more
got to
specific and
source
give
it.
us more
See,
information.
if he doesn't source it, then it's just his opinion. See,
Well,
I'm
he's been pretty no,
believing
no,
that
but
they
he's been
were.
pretty good. He's been pretty good on the fact checking.
Okay,
I
but
mean, in the
then you
sense
get
that,
then you
you
get
don't see
into
him having to walk back
but
words very often.
okay, but doctor, then you get into if that's true, and this guy has a pipeline in, and he should have, absolutely
If
should,
anybody does
because
on
then
the outside, it'd be somebody
why
like
are the
him.
NATO why are the NATO countries turning their back on the USA and giving us a hard time?
Well, I think it's because the NATO nations really just don't have spine and backbone anymore. Uh, they really, honestly, they're vegetarians in a world of carnivores.
Well,
I
there's
mean,
no doubt that
you,
the continent
they
is
want to
is
wish the
chaotic.
problems away. They don't.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with this. I mean, let's put it
Now,
this way: they tell us we're the essential country in the Ukraine. Not to bury the story, right? But if somebody's going to if we're going to finally deal with Russia, it's going to take some boots on the ground there because there's just not enough Ukrainians. When the president of France suggested that to the previous premier of Germany, he went apoplectic. I mean, they just don't want to fight over there. I mean, the Poles do, but there aren't enough of them. But I don't know even that they would put troops in the Ukraine alone. But my feeling is that they want us to do their dirty work for them. And since we went out
Always.
in without asking their permission, well, they didn't want to even. Who's going to benefit from us escorting the ships through? It's other countries. They're the ones who need to buy oil on the international market. And Lord knows for next winter, they need Qatar's natural gas. This thing has to be brought to a conclusion. And they're not going to help us do this unless Donald Trump really twists their arm, which he did. Now we'll see if he gets a result.
Well, the relations are at a low point between the USA and NATO right now. You could place the blame wherever you want, but I believe the continent, European nations, are weak. It's particularly Germany. Germany, Italy has actually stepped up. Spain, I would expel. I just kick them right out. But
You're not going to argue any argument for me on that one. Or at least they ought to be put in the penalty box for a year, Like the Russians can invade Spain if they want to for 1 year.
They're obnoxious. But they're a socialist country that's veering toward communism in Spain. People don't know that, but that's what's going on. All right, last word about this. I think we have gotten into now an area where we know that the American oil companies are making as much money as they possibly can off this Iranian action. And a lot of us are going to be uncomfortable with that. Last word.
Oh, I think that's right. Americans are going to feel very uncomfortable and feel that it's very unfair that the oil companies profit so much. And the oil companies would do well to use some of that money to benefit Americans so they might feel better about it.
Dissent versus disloyalty. Okay. So we're seeing this with Iran. And my job is to report what's happening to you accurately without any shade or spin, the no spin zone. You know that. I've been making my living doing this for 30 years. National news analysis. I do not deceive. I support the Iranian action, but there are some gaps in what happened, and I don't know yet. I will find out. But at this point, Iran is an evil country that has killed thousands of Americans and millions of people all over the world through its funding of terrorism and gunning down its own citizens, going on for almost 40 years now. And they simply won't stop developing the nuclear weapon, according to the United Nations. Okay. So I'm president. I got to evaluate all of that. Now, let's get into disloyalty versus dissent. If you oppose the Iran action, you're a loyal American. That's dissent. You are absolutely within your rights to do that. But remember, it's got to be fact-based. It can't be, I hate Trump, so I hate everything he does. That's disloyal. Now, he's the president. 77 million Americans voted for him. But saying maybe this isn't worth it because I have to pay a lot more money for gasoline and utilities and food. Okay, that's a valid point of discussion. Then there is satire. Yeah, satire is okay, and it's not disloyal. And it depends on who's delivering it, of course, because people like Stephen Colbert, and I'll play you a soundbite in a moment, he hates Trump. So whatever Trump does, he's going to mock it. Whatever the Democrats and liberals do, he's going to ignore it. Roll the tape.
This military mission has been dubbed Operation Epic Fury. Fun fact, no. Fun fact, Epic Fury is an anagram for Forget Epstein. Now, right off the top, can we check that? Can we check, make sure that's the case? Fact check that?
All right, so Colbert's gone come May 21st. See ya. Not going to miss ya. Okay. What about disloyalty? Then it gets into another zone. Okay? And here is a perfect example. Go.
And I don't think you should have illegally killed the foreign leader of a nation, who's also, by the way, a spiritual leader to millions of Shia Muslims around the world. He wasn't my spiritual leader, but he's a spiritual leader to many people I know. And that's a reality.
Okay, so now the Ayatollahs, murderers, killers, they're spiritual leaders. And he, oh, no, you can't. No. It's you, Mike. I mean, come on. You know, Jim Jones was a spiritual leader. Remember him in South America, poisoning all of his followers? Yeah, but no, you can't. Now, he's disloyal, that guy. In my opinion, my humble opinion, not a loyal American. Doesn't like this country, doesn't look out for his country. Why people book him is just astounding. I had this conversation with Chris Cuomo because he was on a show that I was on, I don't know, about a year ago on News Nation. I said, I'm not going to appear with the guy anymore. He hates America. Why do I want to appear with somebody like that? And I won't. Oh, no, he's just no. Hates America. Again, in my opinion. Okay. Now, Newsbusters, a conservative group that tracks the media, says that 94% of all the Iranian war-related jokes poked fun at the United States, not Iran or Spain or no. It was all about us, okay? And it's true. It's like Trump's an idiot. Trump's there. You heard the Colbert crowd. And they know nothing. Those people don't know anything. I mean, they're sitting there and they like the far left point of view, so that's why they're in the Ed Sullivan Theater. Okay, but they don't know anything. So 94%, that's a lot. And some of it is okay, as I mentioned, you go up to the line. But some of it is pandering to an audience. So Saturday Night Live is a very good example of this. Very rarely did it ever make fun of Joe Biden. If there was ever a man you could make fun of. But they weren't really interested in mocking him once in a while, but not then. But every blanking week, they're on Trump. Go.
Hi, it's me, Donald Trump. You might remember me from such campaign promises as lower gas prices and no more wars. Psych! We love to make promises because a promise is just a lie that hasn't happened yet. But now it has, and gas costs like $1 billion a gallon. And as for the stock market, let me put it in a way that the Harry Styles fans in the crowd tonight will understand. You guys are going to love this one. The stock market is going in one direction, down.
Okay, look, but it's the same every week. Pound them. And that seeps into the culture. So you got the news, corporate news, television industry, and the major urban newspapers. Trump's an idiot. Trump's this. Trump's that. And then you go over to the entertainment industry. Trump's an idiot. Trump's that. These people who don't know anything, they absorb that. It's unprotected under their Constitution. They're not traitors like the other guy. Okay, they're not that. But they're certainly not fair people, and they're certainly not looking out for you. Make fun of everybody. I mean, if you have trouble, call me. I'll write you some stuff. SNL. Final thing I want to show you is there is a deep culture, a liberal culture, and you know that. In Hollywood, saw the Academy Awards for last night. Conan O'Brien is the host. He's a good guy. I know him for a long time. He's not a crazy guy. But Conan has to virtue signal. What I mean by that is he has to tell Hollywood how noble Hollywood is if he wants to continue to work. Roll the tape.
Every film we salute is the product of thousands of people speaking different languages, working hard to make something of beauty. We pay tribute tonight, not just to film, but to the ideals of global artistry, collaboration, patience, resilience, and that rarest of qualities today, optimism.
Okay, so this is the inclusive stuff. Now, most good people believe in inclusion. You don't want to exclude somebody because of the color of their skin or their religion. That's terrible. So we want to have a diversity of opinion and a diversity of artistry. We don't want it forced. Conan, you went to Harvard, I went to Harvard, and we know what happened to that university. It wasn't how skilled you were as a high school student that granted you admission. It was what you looked like. Okay, and what your zip code was. Not anything other than that. They were selective and forcing inclusion. And by that, they excluded people who should have been admitted to Harvard. Hollywood does that all day long. All day long, they do that. And Conan likes it. Okay, as long as it's not forced, and in Hollywood, it is forced. So you can see this tremendous liberal wave coming at the country, even in a situation as important and complicated as Iran. And I don't believe most people understand what's going on there. And it's my job to try to clear that up a little bit. And that's the memo.